I see the word parity and lowest common denominator being thrown around a lot today on Twitter and other places I normally visit for my gaming news, and I had a video planned for today. I did my million gamer score thing. If you guys want to see me hit a million gamer score, that's the previous video. Today's the 1 year anniversary of that. Check it out. But I wanted to do top 10 games that impressed me the most at this year's E3. And I'm still going to make the video, but I had so many requests to do a video about this parity, lowest common denominator stuff that video for the top 10 games will be tomorrow. So, geez, we all kind of assumed, or at least I assumed, that this was going to be the case going forward. If you recall, when Destiny 2 got revealed, I made a video basically that said, and the title was Destiny 2 highlights a potential major issue with Xbox Scorpio, which is now, of course, the Xbox One X. And in that video, I talked about how developers may not choose to take full advantage of Scorpio, and they may just aim for parity among the devices that are available at that time, which seemed reasonable to me, right? Like, I kind of assumed that would happen because it's kind of been like that for years. But then today, Digital Foundry analyzed some pixels from a direct capture from Assassin's Creed Origins, and come to find out that Assassin's Creed Origins, even though Phil said it was running 4K on stage, he didn't say it was running native. The game's running in checkerboarding. Checkerboarding 4K. My buddy Jez Corden, he ran an article, Windows Central, basically saying that the two versions are going to be virtually similar resolution-wise, with the Xbox One X maybe having some improvements in other different areas or maintaining checkerboarded 4K or frame rate more often than the Pro. So a lot of people got upset by that news today, implying that, I'm going to be spending $500 on an Xbox One S. I want the best versions of the games, and if I'm just getting ports of PS4 Pro games, then that's not exactly worth the extra money. And that point of view is extremely valid. Extremely valid. If you wanted to play that game in those same exact settings as Pro and Xbox, why would you want to pay $100 more for the same thing? So I completely get that line of thought. But this speaks to the broader issue, as most people on Twitter, myself included, have no idea about game development whatsoever. I don't know what goes into making a game. I don't know anything about time limits, constraints, budget issues, political forces, and things like that, which affect that. Now, also, this kind of also ties into a Jim Ryan interview today and a Phil Spencer interview from yesterday. It seems to me that Microsoft and Sony are a bit going at each other a little bit more than we're used to recently. And it's because Microsoft is now the new king on the block when it comes to power, which Sony had previously been for the past 4 years. Sony has used their power advantage often, frequently. They've lorded it over Xbox as a selling point to the system, and rightfully so. A lot of people out there want to buy the system that is going to play the games the best. I don't begrudge Sony or Microsoft advertising that they have, the most powerful console, but I shouldn't say it's funny to see them go at it like this. It's honestly to be expected to see it. Now that Microsoft is like, we have the most powerful console, there is no reason, like Phil said on the GameSpot interview, go check that out if you haven't. Phil said that there's basically no reason the Xbox One X games won't be better than the other games on the PS4 Pro. But he's not going to mandate developers make, 4K or 60. Like, it's up to them to make the game they want. But then you get to like Jim Ryan today, and they asked him a question about, hey, you have these marketing deals with these games. They asked him if he thought there would be a significant performance and image quality difference between those games on Xbox One S and PS4 Pro. And Jim Ryan, in his answer, said he wouldn't go into specific details of the individual contracts with those partners, but he talked about this idea of, hey, if you look back to the PS3 generation, they had a more powerful system, right? But not a lot of developers dev for it. He said here, what I would like to do is cast our minds back to the PS3 gen, where we had on paper more impressive specifications than our competition, and in some areas by quite a considerable margin. Now that didn't play out the way we anticipated it, and this has nothing to do with co-marketing deals. This is just general developer and publisher dynamics. And what happened was that developers, maybe at behest of publishers, developed up to the lowest common denominator and stopped there. And in very few cases took advantage of the additional horsepower of the PS3. Now, he's referring to the fact that the cell processor in the PS3 was, on paper, a better machine than the 360, but the PS3 got terrible ports of a lot of 360 games. The 360 also at that time was easier to code for. That's what he doesn't kind of mention. If you remember back in the PS3, developers hated the PS3. They said it was so hard to make games for, and the 360 was so much easier. So devs made for 360 first and ported the games over. Now, it also benefited Microsoft at the time that they were the market leader at that point. And he says here, developed up to the lowest common denominator and stopped where? And then, of course, the follow-up question is, why do you say that? And Jim Ryan says, well, because you only do one set of work. You don't do one set of work to get up to one level, and then a different amount of work, and constantly may need to go further. The problem I have with this whole you dev up to the lowest common denominator and stop there is he's basically lying, not to himself and to the audience. And here's what I mean by that. Take this generation. What has the PS4 rested its laurels on this whole gen? Power, right? It's also rested the laurels basically by having the best versions of all the multi-platform games. Every time a multi-platform game came out, Digital Foundry ran articles, there was threads on NeoGAF, Twitter posts, 900p for Star Wars Battlefront on PS4, a blurry 720p on Xbox One, 1080p for Call of Duty, 720p on Xbox. Like, you get it. They made PS4 games better. But according to Jim Ryan, that shouldn't have been the case, because they should only have developed up to the lowest common denominator and stopped there. Lowest common denominator in that sense being the Xbox One. But clearly, devs went beyond what the Xbox One could do and made games better for the PS4 So his statement there kind of feels like a lie to me, at least at least not telling the whole truth. And honestly, what he's saying there, yeah, it's like a statement to say don't buy an Xbox One X, but he's also saying don't buy a PS4 Pro. In the same breath where he's talking down about, hey, devs go to the lowest common denominator and that's what it is, and basically implying don't buy an Xbox One X, he's also saying don't buy a PS4 Pro, because devs are only going to dev to PS4 and Xbox One levels. So he almost made an argument against his own system. And that's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Jim Ryan says some really dumb things. And clearly you can tell that they don't like to be on the losing side of the spec war. Because let me look at this statement here. He asked about, but the Xbox One is more powerful console than the Pro. It's very difficult to argue with the specs, and Microsoft is making that point quite hard. Yada, yada, yada. Isn't that comparison a problem for you? Look what he says here. Well, we'll see when they launch in 6 months' time. The number of partnerships, and yes, there are big titles, I won't dispute that, is small. There are a handful. There will be hundreds of games published this year, And those games' market forces will prevail. If a publisher or developer wants to take advantage of the supposed power of the X, they will do that. If they don't, they won't. The supposed power of the X. Oh yeah, Jim Ryan, we got that passive aggressiveness in there. The supposed power of the X. Look, I understand he is a member of the executive team on Sony, so of course he's going to downplay the fact that the Xbox One X is going to run all their games better than his system, right? But he'd be also the first one out there if the shoe was on the other foot, and I guarantee you when the PS5 comes out and they have all these interviews again, that he'll be talking about how their games will run better on the PS5, yada, yada, yada. He won't be talking about lowest common denominators there. Guaranteed. But I mean, his final statement is true. If developers want to take advantage of the power, they will. If they don't, they won't. And if Assassin's Creed Origins, like Digital Foundry says, if that's basically gonna be parity on Xbox One X and PS4 Pro, then that's what they want for the game. But we already know, you can take the Arc devs. They said their game is 1080p 30 on the Pro, 1080p 60. So it might be a case of the bigger games, since they have a lot of moving parts, a lot of people working on the game, gigantically big, that maybe they just can't do those type of things. Maybe they don't have the time, the money, or the manpower to make one version really better than the other, but maybe a smaller dev, like a dev of Arc, or maybe some smaller indie games, maybe those ones, since there's a lot of pride in making video games, maybe those type of devs would want to make a game better for their system. And also, first party is important in this too, don't forget. The best versions of the games, the ones that will truly take advantage of not only the PS4 Pro but the Xbox One X, will be Sony's and Microsoft's first party teams. And that's why it's vitally important you have a strong first party. Yeah, we'll give Sony crap for basically running a Deja Vu 2017 conference at E3 this year. But God of War does look really good, and so does Spider-Man, and Last of Us 2 is coming down the road, and Days Gone looks kind of cool. And those games are games you can only get on PlayStation, and those games will probably be the best looking games on PlayStation, just like Horizon Zero Dawn or Uncharted 4 was, because they're basically making the game only for that system. Multi-platform developers have PC to worry about with the tons of different configurations on there. They have the Xbox One, the Xbox One X now, the PS4, and the PS4 Pro, and God forbid the Nintendo Switch, if they include that. They have so many configurations that they have to work through that they can't obviously get those games to look as good as Uncharted 4 or any of the games that Sony does for their own first party. And the same should be said for Microsoft. Sea of Thieves should be one of the best looking games on the system. Crackdown 3, Halo 6, Gears 5. Those devs only have to worry about Xbox One X and the regular Xbox and Windows 10. Like, those games should be pushing the envelope. That's why you want a strong first party stable, so those developers can max out that platform. Man, sometimes I get tired talking about this stuff, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Man, Assassin's Creed thing today just kind of blew up. And you know, when we get closer to launch of the Xbox One X, it's going to get even worse because more games will be coming out and the comparisons will be rolling in. And if a lot of these games are parity between the Pro and the Xbox One X, there's going to be a lot of cheering on the PlayStation side. Haha, your system sucks. And a lot of angry Xbox fans saying, what the hell? Are you a lazy dev? What is really going on behind the scenes? Is Sony paying devs to make the games look the same? And I'm not really sure. There's a nebulous kind of... I don't think Sony's going out there and paying developers to make their games intentionally worse. I just think that's maybe how game development works. And this is coming from someone who has literally no idea about game development. I'm not the person to come through to this stuff. I'm just giving my opinion on this whole thing because I was requested to by a number of people that wanted me to talk about this. But it is, Whew, man, it's only going to get worse from here on out. Believe me, there's going to be more games that aim for parity and a lot of angry or elated people on both sides of the aisles. But to me, like I've said before, the resolution stuff doesn't particularly matter. I just really want to play a good game at the end of the day. You know, when you play a great game, whether it's Ori and the Blind Forest or Last of Us or Inside or anything like that, does it really matter if it's checkerboarded 4K, native 4K, dynamic 4K, 1080p, or whatever? Not really. The game's going to be great regardless of the resolution. Sure, it'll look better on a better TV, but the game's great regardless. The resolution doesn't necessarily make it great, and that's where I think a lot of people lose sight in. They get caught up in this 4K hype. You know, it's all. So, yeah. That's my rambling thoughts for this video, guys. So, parity. Is the Xbox One X being held back by the Pro? Who knows? We'll find out eventually. I just have this feeling in the back of my mind that there are going to be a lot more games that aim for parity between the two and a lot of butthurt people down the road. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, subscribe. You know the whole deal. I'll see everybody later.